I spent $250 on paints as a beginner. Was it worth it? Well, this is an awful lot of paints. Well, hello there. I'm Tatiana Volk, the GM Witch, and today I'm going to share my insanity with you. I decided to get the complete set of Army Painter speed paints. Go big or go home, I guess. I'm gonna test them all out and let you know how I feel about them as a complete beginner. Will this actually make painting more enjoyable? Will it speed up my process? I don't know. Let's find out. And as usual, I will have everything linked down below if you also are interested in getting this set or some of the smaller ones to try out. It's pretty nice that it comes with a palette and a paintbrush. Not sure how good either of those are. I have been staring at this sitting on my shelf for like a week now, and I am so excited to dive into this, but now we are ready. Everything is sounding like it's tumbling around in there, so hopefully we're not gonna have any problems. I need to hold the whole thing. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it is a mess. Oh, okay. That's a little alarming. Look at this. For this much money, you would think. We'll figure it out. I don't think anything's exploded, hopefully. Gosh, look at this. That packaging did not keep anything in place. They're everywhere. This did not work out at all. This is fresh opening. This is what it looked like. Oh look, there's some more paintbrushes. That's nice. Packaging, not A+. It's chaos here. So I'm going to take these all out and we will continue. Okay, something a little alarming here is that after putting everything into their containers, there are still two completely empty ones. So I guess I'll have to figure out how many are supposed to be in here total and make sure that I got everything. I'm assuming they must include these as fillers. So it says 90 speed paint, 79 unique colors, 10 speed paint metallics, and speed paint medium. Okay, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 10 each. So that would be enough, right? Because if there's 10 each, 7 here, that's 70, and then the 2 that were fine is 90 plus the speed paint. So it looks like we do have everything, so that's good. Okay, now that we successfully have an army of paints here, I think it's the perfect time to prime these tops and start painting them so that I have a better idea of what each paint looks like before we go into the actual mini painting portion of this video. Yeah, this is a lot. It was at this point that I decided to go to the local hobby store and see if I can find some white primer paint that was not in an aerosol can so that I can kind of paint everything at my desk and get it on footage without having any issues. But unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of luck in that department, so came looking for paint, left with games. I guess we'll have to try something else. I feel like this is a good point to remind you guys that I am a beginner at this part of the hobby. I have only really painted a handful of minis beforehand, and although I am not a noob at painting in general, as I did major in illustration in college, you'd be surprised at how different painting 2D versus 3D is. And so not familiar with the proper tools, the proper techniques, and just working on such a small scale as illustration, they often encourage you the exact opposite, to work large, to use big paint brushes, to not focus on the details. And so yeah, this was definitely a struggle, and I did do some silly things and learn a lot along the way, which we will get to. Done with the gray primer, now it's time for a little bit of white acrylic paint. It's at this point that I would like to say that I realized this wasn't really going to work out quite the way I was hoping, but unfortunately that's not the case. Here I am painting all of these paint tops, and although it didn't quite look right, I was going ahead with it anyway. Okay, I have been painting bottle tops for what feels like hours now. I don't actually know if it's been that long, but I am feeling it. Yeah, I am feeling kind of sore, so stretch time. Good morning. So it is the next day. I have completed the priming and white painting for all of these, and I have about 24 bottles left to do this morning. I could have done it last night, but I decided to play board games with my family instead. So I will finish this up before work, and hopefully we can start on the colors and then maybe finish them up after work. Okay, so after several attempts of covering the tops with brush on primer and paint without getting a smooth enough finish, I decided that it was okay to be a little bit messy, and I used my spray on white primer to cover the tops, and I think it turned out pretty well. As you can see, there is some overspray. I held them in my hand with a glove and used my hand as a way to block the labels. That way I can have a much smoother application of the base and give the actual paint a better representation. So now it's time to actually paint the tops. I'm going to put them in a box as I complete them so that I can do a spray of varnish at the end to hopefully hold everything in, because I have a feeling that things will chip off as I use them, and I would like to have that happen as little as possible. So I guess let's get into it. I will admit that after spray painting the bottle tops, I did expect all of the paint to go on a lot smoother than it did. I'm glad I went through the process of having that really clear coat, because I feel like had I not, I would have assumed that the application had more to do with a splotchy paint coat of the base color versus the actual paints themselves behaving that way. Not gonna lie, feeling a little bit nervous based off of how they are currently looking on the tops. I'm expecting things to be a lot smoother so that I can get really nice finishes. I do know that from some of the videos I have seen, working on really large areas, it is really hard to get them to not be splotchy, but since these bottle tops are so small in the grand scheme of things, I guess I was just expecting everything to go on a lot smoother than it did. Okay, so I had every intention of animating every single one of these, but there are 90 total. That's gonna take a while, so let's just skip to the end so we can move on to the next step. Okay, so my last bottle did have a clog, and I was being very careful, but when I put a little bit of pressure here, it just squirted out and kind of got all over everything. Not as bad as I've seen, but surprising considering I actually removed this whole top to make sure there wasn't actually anything stuck in here. I was able to make every other one work just fine. It's literally the last one to do. I have all of these ready for a varnish spray. Okay, and that's it for the prep paint, I guess, where I do all of the caps. It's really satisfying seeing everything together here at the end, and I'm glad I'm able to kind of see what they look like, even though it still turned out a little bit more blotchy than I was expecting after taking the time to spray paint all of the tops for the smoothest base I could get. Okay, looking through what I have on hand, I do have some mini monsters that will be relevant to the campaign I'm currently running that are already primed. So I have a couple of wraiths that are based, primed, and pretty much ready to go. So I will probably do those. I also have a hag who is based, primed, and ready to go. I have the black primer already on these figures. Now I just need to go in with a dry brush and some white paint to do some highlights. I'm gonna try and do the slap chop approach to painting these miniatures and utilizing these speed paints so that hopefully I get the best experience and things go pretty much the quickest. I think I probably need to figure out my color scheme before I get too far into it. Now, because I don't have an actual dry brush palette, I'm just going to be using this dried crinkly disposable palette that has ridges and bumps from the dried paint. That was probably way more than I needed. Okay, so now it is time to go on to the dry brushing portion. As I already mentioned, I tried to makeshift a dry brush palette to brush off a lot of the wet paint so that I could get the best application possible. And then I am focusing on adding the white paint to the top portion of the mini to act as highlights, and then using the black base as the shadows and keeping those in the lower portion. So I am trying to be meaningful with where I place this so that when I get to the actual painting portion, the highlights and shadows are already done for me. Because I am not the best at this technique, there are a couple of areas where I went in a little bit too thick or too heavy with the paint, but for the most part I was able to blend out, continuing to use the dry brush, and I think overall everything turned out looking pretty well at this stage for a beginner mini painter. So hopefully we'll be okay for the next step. Okay, so we have made it to the actual painting portion of the video. Yay! So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing, but also my thoughts over the entire experience. As you can see, since I have picked out all of the paints in advance, I am just going in and blocking in colors right off the bat so that I have an idea of what things are going to look like. And then when I run into an issue of not having a color predetermined, I look at what I have available. Since the tops of all of the paints are already done up, so I have a good idea of what the paint will look like on a miniature. That definitely helps with this step. I would highly recommend doing that if you are getting any types of paints for minis. This is probably my favorite thing that I did in this entire video and will use moving forward and cherish moving forward just in general. But that does make picking things a lot easier after having the initial paints picked out. And I think because my idea of the world and miniatures and gaming is that things are a lot of dirty and grungy, I'm super happy with how things actually look on the miniatures. But I wonder if I would feel the same if I was painting like a nobleman or somebody who doesn't go out in the world and get dirty and is constantly kind of making a mess of things, because I feel like the way that the speed paints lay is a little bit splotchy still, even though it wasn't as bad on the miniature as it was on the bottle tops, which I find pretty interesting. I'm not sure what's going on there, perhaps because there are a lot smaller sections on the miniatures versus the bottle tops, which I still believe are small, so I don't know. But I was pleasantly surprised with how everything kind of laid out on the miniatures themselves as I was doing them. I do think that if you are a beginner when it comes to miniature painting, that perhaps you shouldn't spend as much as I did. I don't regret it. I'm gonna get use out of them, but I think most people will probably benefit from the smaller packs or getting individual colors. I do know you end up saving in the long run when you get the bigger packs per bottle, but I don't know if I'm gonna be using all of these. I mean, I probably will because I have them, but I don't know if they're necessary for every paint situation. I also personally would like to get more opaque paints as well to expand my collection so that I can hopefully use some of my artistic skills and improve my mini painting in general. I do think the slap chop approach is good for trying to get a lot of stuff done, so I'm going to continue doing that, but I also like the idea of doing some really nice high quality mini paintings as well. So I don't know. We'll kind of see how things go in the future. I'm in no rush because there are so many other things that I spend my time on instead of mini painting. So we'll kind of see how things go in the long run. And I think that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, of course, thumbs up. Let me know if you've used the speed paints, your thoughts on them, that kind of stuff. If you made it this far, include the I think there's a Grim Reaper emoji. Include that down below if you made it this far, or a witch emoji, something like that. And check out some of my tabletop role-playing game videos. I do reviews, adventure building, all of that good stuff, and hopefully we'll get some more painting minis for tabletop role-playing games as well. Thanks for being awesome. Happy painting, and I will catch you in the next one. Until then, bye!